Welcome back. Relationships with the people you work with and you choose to work with, and I'm not talking about necessarily the other employees at your company, but the professionals, the people you choose to work with in your financial world, in your real estate world, or even helping you with your home are so key. And actually, this is interesting because people also have relationships with the things in their home, not just the professionals. And Eileen Schoener joins us, who actually served on the American Society of Interior Design's board of directors, has been the recipient of their presidential citation for outstanding work in her field, and has actually been published in several design industry publications. And, welcome back, Eileen.
Well, thank you. It's so nice to be here on a sunny day. Last time there was snow.
I know. If you're watching the streaming video, which you can get off the KKNW website, you will actually see shadows behind us because we're getting blasted with the sun. Last time you were here, it was snowing.
Yes, it was.
And it's snowing up north. Okay, so, you're talking about reupholstering things. And people have these relationships with their furniture that they chose a long time ago, especially if it's not from Ikea. They may choose to do something different with it. Talk a little bit about, maybe the relationships people have with the things in their home and when it's the right time to do something about it.
Well, upholstery or furniture is a good example. A lot of times people don't choose it. It's given to them, passed down, handed down, family heirloom, and they don't last forever, the fabric, so it might be time to reupholster it. And that's kind of a dying art. And a lot of people aren't doing that. They tend to throw furniture away and buy something new. And new doesn't always mean quality, depending on the construction. So it's kind of interesting why people decide to reupholster. And one of the main reasons is a quality frame. If there's some brand names, I'll say Marge Carson. That's a real expensive frame, and it is solid built, solid wood. And to throw that out wouldn't make sense. It would be much more investment-wise a better deal to reupholster that piece of furniture. But if you have a couch that if you can pick it up with like one finger, it probably isn't a solid frame. It's probably put together with staples and cardboard, and there are some out there that are mass-produced like that. And to put a quality fabric back on it just wouldn't make sense. So there are different.
If you can go buy a new one at Ikea for less than you'd reupholster it, right?
Right.
This is not the Ikea.
Yeah, so you want to look for a quality frame if you're going to reupholster it, or an heirloom that's passed down, or an antique. A lot of people love antiques, and again, they're not being made in that style anymore. And so that's another reason to look at reupholstering.
Which I guess is why they're antiques.
That's why.
What is changing or reupholstering something? What is that going to change? I mean, it's not going to change the way it sits. It's not going to change. I mean, talk about that a little bit.
Okay, I'll use a sofa for example, but if you have one that you sit on it and it's just not comfortable, the back's too low, the seat's too high, it's not comfortable to you, it doesn't make sense to reupholster it. You're not going to like it any better when it's got a new fabric on it than you did when it was the old fabric. If you don't like it now, you're not going to like it when it's a new fabric on it. So there are things you can do to change the style, but basically, if you've never liked it and it's not comfortable, I would turn to looking at something new.
And then so there's kind of this choice you have to make, right?
Right.
And it's new or fix it in some ways.
It's new or fix it, and if you're not sure, it helps to have an upholsterer come in and take a look at your furniture, and they can tell the quality of the frame by looking at it, what kind of springs are in it. There's several different types of bases inside your furniture that you aren't probably aware of, and some will last for 30 years and some will last for 5. And so that's one of the things that a professional can come in and look at and tell you, yes, you have a good piece of furniture here and it is worth redoing. And they can tell you how many yards it's going to take to cover it and some basic costs.
Because, kind of at the end of the day, one of the big things people are going to ask themselves is what's it going to cost? Because it would seem silly, I think, in some places, you wouldn't want to spend more if you can fix your nice piece that already fits in the house, right? You must like the shape somewhat. Yeah, and one of the questions I get quite often from potential clients, they'll call and say, well, what's it going to cost? So is it going to cost more than buying new? I mean, that's a real common question. And sometimes, yes, it will cost more than buying new.
but you might not be talking the same quality of the frame, the things you can't see, and you're definitely not talking about the same quality of fabric. Furniture upholsterers have a very limited selection of fabrics that they offer, and when you're reupholstering, you've got thousands of fabrics you can pick from, and so the quality of the fabric can change too.
How much can it cost to reupholster a couch or a sofa?
That's kind of an open question because it depends on how big it is. Does it have a rolled arm that takes more fabric, or a skirt around the bottom that takes more fabric? But most sofas take between 14 to 16 yards on average. And so whatever your cost of fabric is times that amount is just for the fabric. And labor can be more than that. And again, it depends on what has to be done to the frame.
So just show me your average couch. What's your average couch? I have no idea.
Say $1,200 to $1,900 maybe to redo a sofa.
Okay.
And when you go looking for something new, you're going to be right in that price range too. The difference is it's not just
the one
it's not just recovered. It's not new fabric on what you have. It's taken down to the frame, down to the wood when you reupholster, and it's built up from the frame just like new. The springs are fixed if they need it, and all the padding that's on your frame is replaced, and the new fabric. So you're getting as new on an existing frame that might have a better quality than a new structure.
And that frame, really, like you said, it could actually last longer than I keep bringing up Ikea, but the Ikea couch for a couple $100.
Well,
it should.
Yeah, it should. A lot of furniture has particle board and cardboard, as I mentioned, and some of the older frames are solid woods, and you can tell just by lifting the weight of them sometimes that you're looking at something a little more substantial.
Do you, when you're working in your business and somebody asks you the question, to help them decide between maybe fixing their furniture, reupholstering it versus getting something new, what are some of the biggest choices or biggest, what are some of the biggest challenges somebody would face just in making that decision? Is it typically cost?
Typically it is cost. Fabrics, in my job, I visit with the client and I get a feel for what they're looking for so I can narrow the selection down a little bit. Otherwise, fabric choice can be overwhelming, but I can ask them questions as to what style they like and what colors they like to limit that choice a little bit so that's not so overwhelming. So then it is down to cost and how much they're attached to it. Like you mentioned, their relationship. How much does that piece mean to them? If it means a lot to them, they're going to take a little more time deciding that it's the right thing to do, or if they're not attached to it in any way, they're not going to care. Just never mind. Thanks.
Sure.
But, so most furniture that I redo, and we have an upholstery shop too, is a quality frame. If it's not, when I go there, I'll tell them this is not worth redoing. I have no qualm about doing that.
Well, and that seems to be the big, kind of that big piece of the puzzle we've been talking about today is, somebody willing to tell you not to do something if it's not the right thing to do. Because in so many industries, so many professionals out there are willing to just get the sale. You'll go through the transaction. And Paul Valley, who was here, he said, you guys have a working relationship. And, it's, you can just, who you can trust, who's going to say, this is what it'll cost, or this is the right way to do it.
Yeah, that absolutely. And Paul Valley, I just was at a client's home Monday, and she said to me, that young man you sent out here, he just did a wonderful job for me. And that was Paul doing a garage storage for a client. And I like to hear those things. And if it wasn't worth redoing, I'm sure he would have told them, it's not worth putting all these shelves up in your garage. But
well, and as Paul said, now it makes you look good.
Yeah.
You're the purveyor of the great guy.
Because he's not, he wasn't Paul Valley from Organized Spaces for that job. He was my man, as she put it, that I sent to her.
I hope he's listening on his way back now that you called him your man.
He was my man, according to my clients. So,
that's funny.
It's important that you know who you're dealing with. And,
yeah. Well, Eileen, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to go to break, and then Boyce is going to join us again, and Heather's going to join us. We're going to talk a little bit more about this cost versus quality and making sure we can help people pick the route they're going to go. My name is Ben Brashen. You're listening to Brashenomics.